Hey guys, this is Forsaken Reality here, the 35th episode of the RPG tutorial series. In this episode, we're going to be continuing with our dialogue component and did a little bit of planning for this. I thought of using data tables, but figured that it would actually be better if we used a behavior tree for our dialogue system. Normally, that's used for our AI like behavior, basically. So like if your AI, basically everything that happens after your AI sees you, you'll do the your shooting, or your AI will flee from you, and that will be handled within a behavior component. But it's also got a nice layout that will be really useful for setting up a dialogue tree. So without further ado, we will get into that. The first thing we're going to want to do though is create an AI controller. So we'll go to our blueprints, right click, new folder, and let's call it controllers, because we'll have a few of those as time goes on, not just for the AI. Create a blueprint class, select this drop down, we're going to look for AI controller, select that, create it. Our NPC controller. We don't need to open this up, don't think. No, we just need to create the controller, and then we want to go into our okay, that doesn't fix that issue, so whatever, I'm just gonna keep it that for now. Okay, so now we're going to go to our master AI, and we're going to set our BP NPC controller for our AI controller class. And right here, you're going to want to go to your master and then your class defaults to see this. Compile and save, and now we have our controller set. The next thing we're going to do is create a new folder outside here called behavior trees. And inside dialogue, behavior trees. And in here is where we're going to handle everything, because we're going to use behavior trees for our NPC movement and stuff later on too. For now, I'm just going to create this folder like this. And we're going to want to right click. I want to go to artificial intelligence and create a behavior tree. I'm going to go BT for behavior tree. That's going to be the first one. We're going to be making basically this is going to handle individual dialogue. So each one would be a new one. Being a pain for me right now. Now we have that created. We're also going to need an artificial intelligence Blackboard, which basically handles your variables and stuff for passing around your behavior trees. So we're going to create a new Blackboard, and we're just going to call it dialogue Blackboard. And we're going to open up our dialog tree. And our behavior Blackboard. And then our dialog tree, we're going to click Blackboard. Yeah. See how it's already setting our dialog Blackboard, and when you're opening up your Blackboard, it's actually opening up this, but in your dialog tree. So it's automatically set here, and if it's not, you'll want to click your behavior tree drop down and just set it right here. And basically we're going to handle everything here, so we're going to talk, and it's going to look a lot easier to understand than it would be to set up if we were to use a data table or something like that. So the first thing we're going to need to do in here is go to our Blackboard, and this self actor should automatically be created here, and if it's not, you'll click new key and object, and we're just going to call this dialog widget reference, and that's going to get a reference to our dialog. Bad at spelling, that's a dialog widget reference. That's going to basically tell us our dialog widget is this widget, which we're gonna, you want to click key type and drop down dialog widget, and now we'll have access to that variable within our behavior tree. And we're also going to want a player reply indexed, so we know which reply we're selecting. Now that we have this done, we're going to head over to our dialog widget. So you want to go to your blueprints, widgets, and your dialog widget. And in here, and delete those. I'm going to create a new event. I'll do the set up the exit event too. So we're going to go custom event exit dialog, and that's just going to run our exit, which is right here. That'll close the dialog widget. And one more custom event. That'll be NPC underscore talk. And we're going to need a variable. Going to be NPC talking. Basically, it's going to be checking if our NPC is talking or if our player is talking. So basically, this is going to be used to hide and display the widgets right here for when we're talking to the individual NPCs. So we are talking, first we're going to need an input here, which is going to be text. And we're going to use this event, and we're going to call this in our behavior tree, and that'll basically feed text in through there, and then set that on our dialog widget right here. I'm just gonna hide this player size box and display the NPC. And we're actually gonna make these variables so we can have access to our text and size boxes. And we're gonna get our NPC text. And we're gonna set text. If our NPC is talking, or actually we're gonna set text first. And then we're gonna check. So whatever the text would be. And then we're gonna check that if our NPC is talking. It's gonna set the visibility. I'm actually gonna rename this to talk. So it'll match up a little better. From here we can get our NPC size box, set visibility. So if our NPC is talking, we will, not our NPC size box, our player text size box. We'll set this to collapsed. So we'll hide our player text, make sure that it's hidden. And our NPC size box. I guess we did need to set that there, so I could have just kept that there instead of redoing this, honestly. We're going to set this to not hit testable self only because we want to be able to see it, but we don't want to be able to click NPC text. Collapse player applies and display NPC text. Let's get rid of these comments. That will help explain that a little more, I hope. I'm actually going to create a function for this. I don't have it done in my project, but it will sound a lot better. It'll look a lot better as a function. And this will be an example right here that it will be useful to use a function. So you want to select all this and Control X after the text. Paste that in here. So we're going to check if our NPC is talking. And instead of having this bool here, we can delete that. And we'll actually create an input. And the input will be a bool. So whenever the input is here, we'll checking. So we are talking. We'll do that, and we'll copy this and paste it, plug it in here, and we'll do the opposite. Set this visible, and set this to collapsed. So we do want to be able to hit the player text, so we don't set the not hit testable. Collapse NPC text, and display player apply. be multiple, so I'm just going to put replies. Don't need a return node here because there isn't anywhere it's going to get stuck and have to do useless code. Say if there was it was stuck in here and it was looping through something and you wanted it to finish, or you didn't want it to continue on down the line, you would return it early. It's an early return, basically, that will be called. But now we can just drag our function out. And NPC talk means our NPC is talking. So we'll set this to true. And just like that, we have that. Now, that's going to be everything for our widget here. We have our NPC talk, and now we can start doing something with that, basically, in our behavior tree. So we want to go to our behavior tree, and right here is where the behavior tree starts. You want to drag out of this, and you want to create a sequence, and that will basically, if you hover over it, the sequence node executes their children from left to right, and will stop executing its children when one of their children fails. So basically it'll keep running until something fails, and then if it fails, the sequence fails, and that means it's done. So we need this node here, and we're going to create a new task. So we need to click save and new task. That'll automatically create this. I'm going to browse to that, and we might have a lot of tasks for depending on what we're doing, everything we're doing. So put this in a folder called dialog tasks. So now we have our first task created. Behavior tree task underscore NPC talk. And then here, we will go to our functions, override. We want to receive execute AI. So this will run when this task is called. And we need access to our dialog widget. I want to create a variable. That's going to be dialog widget. And we're not going to call our dialog widget though. We're going to want the widget specifically from our Blackboard. So we're going to call Blackboard key selector. You want to select this one. And then we'll drag this out, get this. And then we want to cast to dialog widget. This is how we're going to get access to our NPC talk. So basically when this runs, we'll run into our NPC talk, and that'll run this task. That'll run in here to set our dialogue. Blackboard value as object. Now we're successfully getting our widget from our Blackboard. Actually, we can create this as a pure because it's always going to succeed. There's never going to be a time when by the time something makes it to this point that there's going to be a fail to the widget, because by this point we already know we have the widget because it's ran through basically every part of it, so it is valid. NPC talk. Now we have our event here. And we're going to need some text. We'll just set some text here. This will be sending out what the AI will be saying basically. And we'll be feeding this text right here. Or for now, we'll just set a default. How are you? Oops. I don't know. Hello text is sent from the NPC talk task. So if this dialog basically displays, we execute it, then that means it's everything's running correctly. So I'm just gonna run this. And there, now we have documented a little bit. Execute when this task is called. Now we want to head back to our dialog tree. We can search for tasks, and our task is actually here now. We can call our task. Missing a few things here though. Go back to our task, and you want to turn these on. Expose them on spawn so we can set it per instance of the AI, not just within the blueprint. Now we have our dialog widget. And I think I did this backwards. Yes, I did. So you don't need to actually fill out this. Apparently it just deleted it all for me. But you don't need to fill that out because we're actually sending it from the dialog tree to the task to send to the dialog widget, not the other way around. The dialog tree just handles getting it there. So we have this, and we'll so basically we see this text, then we'll be good to go. So we have our first text being sent from our behavior tree. That'll be getting sent to here, and that'll be finally being received to set our here. Now we want to open up our dialog component itself. Because over here we have the tree all set up, but there's nothing actually running the tree. So first thing we're going to do I'm going to create a function. I'm going to call this run behavior tree. And in here, it's going to handle everything to do with our behavior tree. We're going to need a few variables. Create one called dialog tree. And we're going to use the the default behavior tree object reference. And we're also going to set a reference to our character so that we can fix a bug at the end of this video. Reference to the character that's interacting. And now we want to go back into our behavior tree function, and we're going to create a few inputs. And one's going to be the AI controller target. It's going to call this run behavior tree actually. Delete that. And we can plug this in here. Okay, that's weird. So anyways, I'm just going to get the AI controller first. AI controller target, and that's going to be AI controller object reference. I see what I was doing wrong here. Run behavior tree. I'm going to get the one from the AI controller. And then we're going to plug this in right here like this. And that will get our behavior tree asset. And then we want to drag out of our controller and use Blackboard because we need this for the behavior tree to work. And we'll also drag Blackboard over here. And one more we need to call, which is from our Blackboard set value as object. And our key name, we're going to drag in and plug in here. And our object value as well. It's gonna, yeah. Okay. Blackboard asset. I'm gonna rename the Blackboard reference. And behavior tree asset. Dialog tree ref. And finally we will return, and we'll use this return in case we need to use any of these values here. So first we'll drag our Blackboard over so we can access our Blackboard outside the function if we wanted to. We will drag our bool for our run behavior tree and our bool for use Blackboard in case you want to access those. And we'll rename these run behavior tree return and run Blackboard return. Now over here, when we should be displaying our behavior tree, our UI will drag this out and connect this, which is the new function that we created. And we need our AI controller reference. Thought I had a reference to it already. No, I didn't. So you want to go to begin play, spawn actor from class. We want to get our controller that we made, the BP NPC controller. You want to drag out, promote the variable. AI controller ref. Let's call that begin play. Now we have access to our AI controller in our. I can just break this because we don't need it specifically spawned anywhere. Break that, it will allow you to compile it. And that here is because we don't have our key name set. Now we have our controller, we can finish this off. I'm just going to organize those a little more. So AI controller left will allow us to go into our AI controller target. I'm going to change target to ref. Our dialog tree. Blackboard, we can just set this because we only have one. You only need one for all of your dialog trees. This will allow you to set your dialog tree like that, for example. But if you want to be able to set it per instance of the component, you actually want to that expose on spawn. So you can actually set it per instance of the AI. And for the key name, I'm just going to type in the name of our dialog widget, the reference, which is whatever the value, whatever is exactly what it's spelled in here in our Blackboard. If you notice it's not filled out in your Blackboard, you just need to refresh that and it will fill it out. Boom. But now we have this. And our object finally, our dialog widget reference. And I'm just gonna test this out and see if we have any issues that we're gonna need to fix. NPC dialog will be displayed here, so we do. Yeah, I think this is it. We actually forgot. You want to open up your blueprint for your AI. So I'm just going to go to my blueprints, AI, interactable. I'm just going to set the default dialog and set this to private. I think we'll get rid of that. Yeah, so now we want our dialog tree, and you can just set your dialog tree for that, and that will set that dialog tree for everything and its children, so they'll all have the same dialog tree. But if you want to set it for each specific one, you can just come in here, open up your dialog component, create a new dialog tree, and set it up, and we'll extend it out so we can have our player options next. For now, I'm just going to test to make sure this works. Hello, sending to NPC for the widget. If this displays here, it has been a success, so that means we know that it's working. One more bug I know that I noticed is when you talk to an AI while you're walking, it'll still continue to walk. So an easy way to fix that, go into our dialogue component. We want to get our character reference. We can get our movement, character movement. You just want to disable movement right here. And obviously, if we're disabling movement, once we run this down here, we will be enabling the movement. We also want to disable the behavior tree. So you want to get your AI controller reference and component. Get brain component. Stop logic. So that tells the AI to stop doing stuff. Disables it'll stop all behavior trees that are running on the AI basically. I want to remove it from the parent. And after it gets removed, not before. I want to I think we have to set our movement mode. I think that would work. I don't have that part of it set up in my project. If not, once we get to the point where we're actually able to disable our dialogue, then we'll test that out. If it doesn't work, then we'll put in what does work. Disable movement when dialogue displays. So now when we walk forward, movement is disabled, but that's a problem with our animation. So we want to go into our animations, unequipped. Okay, so I'm just going to open up my animation blueprint. Island walk. Yeah, that's why. Search idle. I'm going to use my ALS neutral idle pose. The reason I didn't do this before was because the additive was having issues, but I actually figured out the issue with the additive, so I'll be doing the additive once I get through this dialogue system. I'll redo some of the animations to make them a bit nicer and easier to handle. So now when we go up and talk to them, we'll stop, even when we're moving. This video's gone on a bit longer than I wanted it to. This is going to be everything for this episode. If you found this video helpful and want to see more, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button so you won't miss out on any new videos uploads. If you have any questions, suggestions, or comments, feel free to leave those in the comment section below or join my Discord server using the link in the description. Thanks, and I'll see you all in the next episode.